Big vibes, stabilization, this is your boy Black Finesse. We're here for another mitsistudio video, number 2. This one's called Battle of the Atlantic, mitsistudio. This is obviously World War II, but I don't think I know too much about the Battle of the Atlantic. I want to assume during the World War II period, this had to do with U.S. versus Japan or something like that. All I know is it's called the Battle of Midway, or there is a Battle of Midway. Or ocean, whatever. I was never there, nor was I born during that time, so I can never say what's right and what's wrong. So let's go. Woo! Let's go. I see crabs.
The U-boat war, better known as the Battle of the Atlantic, was a decisive battle that determined the outcome of World War II.
Okay.
It was fought mostly by the German service and U-boat fleet to cut Allied supply lines between Great Britain and other parts of the world.
I wasn't familiar with this one.
A huge logistical operation that went swimmingly for Germany in the beginning, and later in the war, still swimmingly, yet in another sense of the word.
Yikes.
After the First World War, severe restrictions were enforced to Germany's military and navy to prevent its expansion and therefore another huge conflict in Western Europe. Obviously, that plan backfired a bit. With the outbreak of World War II, the U-boats would play a major role right from the start. Within 8 hours of Britain's war declaration on Germany, the U-boat commander Fritz Julius Lemp mistakenly torpedoed the civilian cruise liner SSS Athena. That might sound like a dumb thing to do, that's because it is. And remember this Commander Lemp guy, we got more stupid stuff on him later. Some more capable and brave captains like Gunther Prien took near-suicidal risks to maneuver his U-boat into the Royal Navy's home fleet base of Scapa Flow, basically shoving a few torpedoes up the metal behind of the battleship the Royal Oak. These U-boat crews were welcomed as heroes when they arrived home in their ports back in France. Besides the loss of the Royal Oak, the Royal Navy was also losing too many merchant ships. Great Britain was slowly being starved. Churchill knew this was going to be a battle for tonnage.
Winston.
If they could not get more ships into their ports than the Germans would sink, Great Britain could not survive this blockade. So significant was the threat from the U-boats that Churchill once stated, "The only thing that ever really frightened me during the war was the U-boat peril." A guy called Donitz said to Hitler, "Give me more U-boats and I can win the war for you in Europe." And another guy or admiral called Raeder said, "I can do that too, but with big giant battleships that makes your penis look bigger." Needless to say, Raeder won that argument, only for Hitler to have his giant penis image shattered with the sinking of his prestige ship, the Bismarck. Sat back. This was the perfect moment for Donitz to tell Hitler that the Raeder guy sucks kartoffel balls, and reminded him of their little sneaky sleazy U-boat fleet that was already causing havoc to Allied merchant shipping for months. With Hitler's approval, the U-boat fleet started a massive expansion, and more Allied ships fell victim to the invisible threat of the U-boats. With new plans of attack like the Wolfpack tactic, basically a giant meat grinder consisting of multiple U-boats group-raping Allied convoys, made the losses even worse for the Allies, losing more than 200 ships in just 7 months. Germans call this period the happy times. When a bunch of Nazis call something happy, you can assume it's not going to be fun for everyone. And not fun it was. Intense with the US joining the war, basically letting their merchant ships travel the waters fully protected. It's not like they had a friend on the other side of the pond who was warning them about this. The tonnage sunk by German U-boats hit an all-time high now U-boats were also patrolling the US East Coast, picking off merchant ships like it was a full-frenzied hunting season. These happy times proved to be temporary. With the expansion of their U-boat fleet, another problem emerged. More U-boats meant more radio traffic. This was picked up by the British and exposed more positions where the U-boats were operating. The British were also busy deciphering the German naval codes. This was an encrypted code being communicated using a device the Germans called the Enigma, a sort of next-gen typewriter with a shitload of clocks, spinning wheels, and buttons. The British intelligence services at Bletchley Park worked around the clock to crack the German naval.
There's a movie called Enigma, I think.
A 28-year-old mathematical genius with no sex life called Alan Turing built a giant electromechanical device that identified patterns in the German rotor wheels. With the help of a team of cryptanalysts at Bletchley, he was able to crack the codes. Maybe the Germans shouldn't have put Heil Hitler in every message. Silly Germans. With many ships now being redirected around the wolf packs, Donitz became suspicious that the enemy was checking his mailbox. They added additional networks for the U-boats and made other changes to their communications, but did not consider their Enigma codes to be compromised. A good example of how superiority ego issues can get you into trouble. Now, remember that Commander Lemp guy from earlier in the video? If things were not yet bad enough for the Germans, Lemp managed to get his U-110 so badly damaged in action that he was forced to surface, where standard procedure for U-boat commanders was to scuttle their U-boat to prevent the capture of any hardware to the enemy. I guess for Herr Lemp, scuttling and not scuttling a U-boat...
Yo, look how they're swimming.
Torpedoing and
like little beans.
A passenger liner. After failing to destroy his vessel, he jumped from the lifeboat back into the water to fix his mistake, only for him to drown minutes later because he, well, also fucked up the swimming part. With the
Bro,
commander
don't
dead
swim.
and the crew captured by the enemy, the disappearance of U-110 was considered a loss, and Donitz was not aware the British captured their Enigma machine. The Allies were now so effective in redirecting their ships around the U-boats that they purposely routed ships closer to the Wolfpack from time to time. This was done to keep the German High Command in the dark about the cracking of codes. From this time on, things were turning from bad to worse. Basically, a day with patrolling U-boats not finding anything out there was soon to be considered a
that was
good day
graphic?
for Germans. Since the beginning of the war, an underground top-secret headquarters was established in Liverpool to oversee the logistical coordination of the Allied convoys. By 1942, the Western Approaches Tactical Unit was created. This was a team consisting mostly of women, who studied German U-boat tactics and were basically playing war games with the Nazis. This was the 1942 equivalent of an online game server, where a British women's team was going godlike on the Germans, teabagging U-boats. Plus, the Germans did not have the option to rage quit back then. Combined with the use of these new tactics designed by the Western Approaches, the Allies also created new weapons to fully exploit their new order of battle. Despite these developments, there was still a large part of the Atlantic where the U-boats had the upper hand. This area was known as the Mid-Atlantic Gap, which was out of range for Allied planes to escort the convoys. By attacking at night, the U-boats still posed a serious threat to the convoys. However, the new Allied weapons and counter-tactics began to tip the balance of power. With better detection systems and heavier armed destroyer escorts, the losses inflicted to the U-boat fleet became unbearable for the Germans. The final death blow was the introduction of long-range anti-subplanes to close the Mid-Atlantic Gap.
Tough.
With smaller radar devices being installed on aircraft, U-boats could even be attacked from the air in the middle of the night. Now every U-boat in the Atlantic was pretty much fucked. Also, most of the experienced elite crews were already dead or missing and were replaced with a bunch of noobs. The U-boat arm had become a shadow of its former self as a fighting force. Halfway through 1943, the U-boat fleet attacked multiple convoys and suffered their heaviest losses of 43 U-boats in just 4 weeks.
4 weeks?
This event marked the beginning of the end for the U-boats and is remembered as Black May, not to be confused with Happy Times. Kriegsmarine Karma.
Oh wow. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know the Battle of Atlantic. Wow. Okay. Yeah, so I have a lot to learn too, because I don't know why this was never talked about. Even like on for example, Call of Duty. You know, sometimes they like to talk about the main events, like the Battle of the Bulge and stuff like that, D-Day and all that stuff. But the Atlantic battle, I didn't hear about this one. I only knew about the one Midway, you know, with U.S. and Japan and stuff like that. I'm not sure if they talked about this enough. Or maybe I just ain't doing enough research, but that's on me. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe down below. It is your boy Black Finesse. We're out.